I sit in my empty wedding reception venue at midnight, surrounded by untouched centerpieces and wilted flowers that nobody celebrated with me. My parents chose a Hawaii vacation with my golden child sister, Rachel, instead of attending what they called a trivial event for someone at the bottom. Those exact words still echo in my mind like broken glass. The unopened wedding gifts mock me from corner tables, while my phone buzzes with social media notifications showing my family's beach paradise adventures. My husband Jake sleeps upstairs in our honeymoon suite, emotionally drained from watching his new wife get abandoned on the most important day of her life. Tomorrow, I'll discover something that changes everything about my relationship with my family forever. Let me tell you about the Walsh family dynasty, because understanding my background makes what happened next even more devastating. My father, Dr. Benjamin Walsh, runs the most successful cardiology practice in our county, treating politicians and celebrities who fly in specifically for his expertise. My mother, Patricia, built a real estate empire from nothing, now controlling luxury properties across 3 states. Together, they live in a sprawling colonial mansion in Meadowbrook Heights, the kind of neighborhood where driveways cost more than most people's houses. Then there's my sister Rachel, the shining star, who owns 3 boutique fitness studios called Walsh Wellness. She married Marcus, a corporate lawyer, and they have twin boys who attend private school. Rachel drives a white Tesla, lives in a custom-built contemporary home, and regularly appears in local lifestyle magazines as a successful entrepreneur. And then there's me, Zoe Walsh, the family disappointment, who chose to become a high school guidance counselor. I drive a 7-year-old Honda Civic, rent a small apartment above a bakery downtown, and apparently represent everything my family considers beneath their standards. The wedding planning process revealed just how deeply they looked down on my life choices. When Jake and I announced our engagement, my mother's first words were, "Are you sure you want to rush into this?" My father suggested we wait until I figured out my direction in life, as if helping teenagers navigate their futures wasn't a real career. They questioned every decision we made. The venue wasn't prestigious enough. Jake's job as a firefighter seemed unstable to them. They suggested I reconsider my dress budget, implying that spending more than $500 was wasteful for someone in my position. Patricia actually said, "Maybe you should postpone this whole thing until you're more established." The final blow came 3 weeks before the ceremony. Benjamin called me at school during my lunch break and said, "Zoe, your mother and I have been thinking. This wedding feels like throwing money away on a fantasy. Rachel's family has been planning a Hawaii trip, and we think spending time with our successful daughter and grandchildren would be more meaningful than watching you make another impulsive decision." I remember standing in the empty guidance office staring at college brochures scattered across my desk, feeling like someone had punched me in the stomach. "It's my wedding day, Dad." "Exactly," he replied. "And at your age, with your resources, it should be a simple courthouse affair, not this elaborate production. We'll send a nice gift." That gift never came. The morning after my wedding, while Jake and I cleaned up the reception hall ourselves, loading untouched centerpieces into boxes, my phone rang. The caller ID showed First National Bank. "Ms. Walsh, this is Jennifer from Fraud Prevention. We're calling about unusual activity on your credit report. There's been a significant loan application that we need to verify with you." My hands trembled as Jennifer explained that someone had used my Social Security number and personal information to co-sign a $300,000 business loan just 6 weeks ago. My pristine credit score, built carefully over 15 years of responsible financial management, had been the key to approving this massive debt. The loan was processed through our commercial division for a business called Walsh Wellness Studios. Does this sound familiar to you? Walsh Wellness Studios, Rachel's business. As Jennifer read me the application details, my world collapsed. The loan had been approved using my credit history, my employment information, even my address. But I had never signed anything, never even heard about Rachel needing business financing. "According to our records, you came in personally to sign the documents on October 15th. We have your signature on file." October 15th. The same weekend, I was in Seattle for my best friend's bachelorette party, posting pictures on Instagram from Pike Place Market. Jake found me sitting on the floor of the reception hall, staring at my phone, tears streaming down my face. "What's wrong?" "My parents didn't skip our wedding because they thought it was trivial," I whispered. "They skipped it because they knew I was about to discover they've been stealing my identity." The next 72 hours turned me into a detective investigating my own life. Jake took emergency leave from the fire station to help me navigate this nightmare, while I called in sick to school for the first time in 3 years. We spent Monday morning at First National Bank requesting every document related to the fraudulent loan. Sandra Martinez, the loan officer who had processed the application, recognized me immediately when we walked into her office. Her face went pale as she studied my driver's license. "This is very strange," Sandra said, pulling out a thick file folder. "You were here on October 15th to sign these documents. I remember because you seemed nervous and kept your sunglasses on during the entire meeting." She showed me security footage from that day. A woman wearing oversized designer sunglasses, a wide-brimmed hat, and a long coat sat across from Sandra's desk, scrawling signatures on multiple documents. The woman's general build and hair color matched mine, but her mannerisms felt unfamiliar. She said she was recovering from laser eye surgery and couldn't remove the sunglasses. Sandra continued. Her identification checked out, and she knew personal details about you that only family members would know. Your father's medical practice, your sister's business, even your childhood address. Jake leaned forward, studying the footage. Who else was with her? A younger woman who identified herself as Rachel Walsh, acting as a character witness. She confirmed your identity and provided additional personal information to verify the application. My sister had been there. My sister had watched someone impersonate me and actively helped the deception succeed. We requested copies of every document. The forged signature was sophisticated, clearly created by someone who had studied my handwriting extensively. But small details revealed the fraud. My real signature has a distinctive loop in the Z that connects to the rest of my name. The forged version showed careful practice, but missed that subtle connection. The loan documents told a devastating story. $300,000 had been transferred directly to Walsh Wellness Studios, LLC, on October 16th. Bank statements showed that same account had funded the Hawaii vacation, with charges totaling $47,000 for flights, luxury resort accommodations, dining, and activities for 5 people. My parents had celebrated their theft of my financial future with a tropical paradise vacation. But the investigation revealed something even more sinister. This wasn't their first time exploiting my identity. Credit monitoring showed a pattern of unauthorized inquiries dating back 2 years. Someone had been systematically checking my credit score, studying my financial habits, and building a profile of my creditworthiness. Jake spread the documents across our kitchen table like puzzle pieces. "Look at the timing," he said, pointing to dates on various credit reports. "Every inquiry happens right before major family events. Your birthday, Christmas, Easter. They were gathering intelligence during family gatherings." I remembered those occasions differently now. My mother asking about my financial planning during birthday dinner. My father joking about my responsible money management at Christmas. Rachel complimenting my amazing credit score during Easter brunch. They hadn't been making conversation. They'd been conducting surveillance. The final piece of evidence came from Rachel's business records, which we accessed through public filing databases. Walsh Wellness Studios had been struggling financially for over a year. 2 of her 3 locations were operating at a loss, and she owed significant money to equipment suppliers and contractors. The $300,000 loan hadn't just funded expansion, it had prevented bankruptcy. My perfect credit score had saved my sister's failing business empire, while my parents celebrated by taking a luxury vacation instead of attending my wedding. Armed with a folder of evidence that felt like holding proof of my family's betrayal, Jake and I drove to my parents' house on Thursday evening. The October sun cast long shadows across Meadowbrook Heights as we pulled into their circular driveway past the fountain and manicured gardens that suddenly felt like monuments to stolen money. The house buzzed with activity. Rachel's white Tesla sat next to my parents' matching BMW sedans, and I could hear children's laughter from the backyard. Through the large front windows, I saw my family unpacking suitcases and sorting through shopping bags covered in tropical prints. Patricia answered the door wearing a flowing Hawaiian print dress and a tan that glowed against her newly highlighted hair. Zoe. What a surprise. We just got back from the most amazing trip. The casual greeting felt like a slap. No acknowledgement of missing my wedding, no apology for their absence, just cheerful chatter about their vacation. We found the entire family in the spacious living room surrounded by souvenirs and photo albums. Benjamin wore a bright blue Aloha shirt and was showing his grandchildren carved wooden tiki figurines. Rachel sat cross-legged on the Persian rug, organizing jewelry purchases, while her twins played with new beach toys. "Look what Grandpa brought us from Hawaii," 7-year-old Tyler announced, holding up a miniature surfboard with his name painted on it. Marcus glanced up from his phone where he was editing vacation videos. "How was the honeymoon? I saw some photos on Facebook. Looked nice." The casual tone ignited something furious inside me. I pulled out the bank documents and placed them on the coffee table, scattering vacation photos. "We need to talk about this loan," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. The room went silent. Patricia's smile faded as she recognized the First National Bank letterhead. Benjamin set down his tiki figurine and reached for his reading glasses. "What loan?" Rachel asked, but her voice carried no surprise. I explained everything. The fraudulent application, the forged signature, the security footage, the timeline that perfectly matched their Hawaii trip. With each detail, the temperature in the room seemed to drop. When I finished, I expected denials, apologies, maybe even shock. Instead, my father's response left me speechless. "Zoe, you're being dramatic about a family investment opportunity," Benjamin said calmly. "Rachel needed capital to expand her business, and your credit profile made the loan possible. This benefits everyone." "I never signed anything." Patricia waved her hand dismissively. "Details like that can be worked out later. The important thing is that Rachel's business is secure and the family wealth continues growing. You committed fraud. You stole my identity." Rachel finally spoke up, her voice sharp with irritation. "Stole is such an ugly word. We used family resources to help family business. You should be grateful that you could finally contribute something meaningful instead of just teaching high school kids about college applications they probably can't afford anyway." The cruelty of that statement hit me like a physical blow. Jake stepped closer to me, his firefighter training kicking in as he recognized emotional danger. "This is identity theft," Jake said firmly. "It's a federal crime." Marcus laughed, still editing his videos. "Federal crime, come on, man. This is family business. Zoe's being overly sensitive because she's embarrassed about her little wedding party that nobody wanted to attend." "Nobody wanted to attend," I repeated, my voice rising. "It was my wedding day, and it was an embarrassing spectacle." Patricia snapped her vacation, calm evaporating. A guidance counselor marrying a firefighter in a community center. Do you have any idea how that reflects on this family's reputation? We couldn't be associated with such low standards. Benjamin nodded in agreement. "Your life choices have been consistently disappointing, Zoe. At least this loan situation gives you a chance to support something worthwhile for once." I stared at these people who shared my DNA but felt like strangers. "I'm calling the police." Rachel jumped to her feet. "You're going to call the police on your own family over money that's helping all of us succeed. Over fraud and identity theft. Over your jealousy and pettiness," she shot back. "You've always resented my success, and now you're attacking family unity because you can't stand that I built something important while you're stuck helping teenagers fill out college forms." I moved toward the door, but Marcus stepped in front of me, blocking my path. "I think everyone needs to calm down and think about this rationally. Get out of my way." Zoe, you're clearly upset. Maybe you should sit down and think about what you're really saying here. Jake positioned himself between Marcus and me. She said move. The tension escalated quickly. Rachel pulled out her phone and started recording. I'm documenting this threatening behavior. Zoe's obviously having some kind of breakdown. Breakdown. I laughed bitterly. I'm having a breakdown because my family stole my identity and skipped my wedding to celebrate with stolen money. Benjamin reached for his phone. I think we need to call someone to help Zoe. She's clearly not thinking straight. Who are you calling? The police, Patricia said coolly. You're threatening us and making false accusations. This behavior is concerning, especially after your recent emotional instability around the wedding. My mouth dropped open as I realized what was happening. They were turning this around, making me the unstable one, the family member who couldn't handle stress and was lashing out with wild accusations. Within minutes, 2 police officers arrived. Officer Johnson, a middle-aged man with kind eyes, and Officer Rodriguez, a younger woman who took notes carefully as my family presented their version of events. Our daughter has been under tremendous stress since her wedding, Patricia explained in her most concerned mother voice. She's been making increasingly wild accusations about family financial matters that she doesn't understand. Benjamin added his professional credibility. As a physician, I'm concerned about her mental state. She showed up here tonight making threats and false claims about identity theft. We're worried she might harm herself or someone else. Rachel showed the officers her phone footage of me raising my voice and demanding to leave. Marcus corroborated their story about my threatening behavior and irrational accusations. Jake tried to explain about the bank documents, but 3 family members presented a united front against my recent instability and pattern of emotional outbursts since the wedding stress. Without forensic evidence immediately available and with 3 witnesses describing the same behavior pattern, the officers had little choice. They asked me to step outside for questioning. Ma'am, your family is concerned about your well-being, Officer Johnson said gently. They've described some concerning behaviors, and they showed us evidence of you making accusations and raising your voice tonight. They stole my identity. I have bank documents proving it. Officer Rodriguez reviewed the papers Jake handed her. These documents show a loan application, but they also show it was signed by someone with your name. Without handwriting analysis or other forensic evidence, we can't determine if this is fraud or a family financial dispute. Check the security footage from the bank. I wasn't even in town that day. That investigation takes time, ma'am. Right now, we have 3 family members reporting concerning behavior, and they've shown us video of you making threats tonight. Through the front window, I could see my family watching from their living room, surrounded by their Hawaii souvenirs and stolen prosperity. Patricia held her grandchildren protectively as if I posed a danger to them. Are you going to arrest me for being the victim of identity theft? Officer Johnson sighed. We're going to ask you to leave the property tonight and give everyone time to cool down. If you want to pursue fraud charges, you'll need to file a formal report with more evidence. But as we walked toward our car, Patricia called out from the front door. Officers, we want to file a harassment and trespassing complaint. Our daughter threatened us in our own home and refused to leave when asked. My family pressed charges against me that night. I spent 12 hours in county jail while Jake scrambled to find bail money and hire a lawyer, all because I had confronted my own family about stealing my financial identity. The irony felt crushing. They had committed federal fraud, but I was the one sitting in a cell, fingerprinted and photographed like a common criminal. Sitting on a metal bench in a holding cell at 2 a.m, wearing an orange jumpsuit and paper slippers, I experienced the lowest moment of my life. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, while 3 other women slept on thin mattresses, and I stared at the concrete wall, trying to process how my own family had orchestrated my arrest. Jake mortgaged our small house the next morning to post bail and hire David Chen, a family law attorney who specialized in fraud cases. David's office occupied the 3rd floor of a modest building downtown, filled with case files and legal textbooks that somehow felt more comforting than my family's mansion. I've seen cases like this before. David said, reviewing my documents while I sat across from his desk, still wearing yesterday's clothes. Financial fraud involving family members is more common than people realize, but it's particularly devastating because it combines criminal behavior with emotional betrayal. He explained that elder abuse often worked in reverse with successful older family members exploiting younger relatives who had established good credit. Your parents used their knowledge of your personal information and their credibility in the community to commit sophisticated identity theft. David's investigator Maria Rodriguez joined our meeting after lunch. A former FBI agent with steel gray hair and sharp eyes, Maria had spent 20 years tracking financial criminals before transitioning to private investigation. The pattern here fits organized family fraud, Maria said, spreading my case materials across David's conference table. The timing, the sophistication of the forgery, the coordinated alibis during your confrontation. This wasn't impulsive. They planned this carefully. Maria's preliminary investigation revealed disturbing details. The loan application hadn't just used my current information. Someone had accessed my high school transcripts, my college records, even my employment history at the school district. The level of research suggested months of preparation. They built a complete profile of your financial life, Maria explained. Credit score, employment stability, debt-to-income ratio, even your relationship status. Whoever filled out this application knew details that only family members would have. But Maria's most significant discovery came through her law enforcement contacts. She ran background checks on my entire family and found something that changed everything. Zoe, you're not their first victim. Maria opened her laptop and showed me court records from Oregon. 5 years ago, my cousin Thomas Walsh had filed similar charges against my parents. Thomas, who now worked as a software engineer in Portland, had been victimized during his divorce proceedings. According to these court documents, your parents used Thomas's identity to secure a $200,000 loan that funded Rachel's first fitness studio. Thomas discovered the fraud 6 months later and pressed charges, but the case was dismissed when your parents claimed it was a family misunderstanding and paid restitution. David leaned forward. Did you know about this? I shook my head, feeling nauseous. We lost touch with Thomas after he moved to Oregon. My parents said he was going through a difficult divorce and wanted space from the family. He wanted space because they had stolen his identity, Maria said grimly. We called Thomas that afternoon. His voice over speakerphone carried a mixture of vindication and sympathy when I explained my situation. I've been waiting 5 years for someone else to figure out what your parents really are, Thomas said. They're not just opportunistic thieves. They're sophisticated fraud artists who use family connections to identify and exploit victims. Thomas agreed to testify in my case and shared details that revealed the full scope of my parents' criminal operation. They had used his excellent credit during his divorce, knowing he was too distracted and emotionally devastated to monitor his finances carefully. Your father called me during the worst part of my divorce, Thomas recalled. Said he needed a co-signer for some medical equipment financing, just a formality for his practice expansion. I was so destroyed emotionally that I barely read what I was signing. The money had gone directly to Rachel's business, not medical equipment. When Thomas discovered the truth months later, my parents painted him as an unstable, bitter divorcee, making false accusations against family members who had tried to help him. The community sided with them, Thomas said. Successful doctor and businesswoman versus divorce software guy going through emotional problems. Everyone assumed I was lying or confused. Maria's investigation expanded beyond my immediate family. She discovered that Patricia's background in banking hadn't been mentioned accidentally during our confrontation. Patricia had worked at First National Bank for 15 years before transitioning to real estate, giving her insider knowledge of loan processes and fraud prevention measures. She knew exactly how to structure this fraud to avoid immediate detection, Maria explained. The loan amount, the business justification, even the timing of the application. Everything was calculated to slip through standard verification procedures. Benjamin's medical practice provided another advantage. As a prominent cardiologist, he had access to personal information through patient files, insurance records, and professional networks. Several of his patients were business owners who had mentioned family members with good credit during casual conversations. The most shocking discovery came through digital forensics on social media and public records. Maria traced a pattern of potential victims connected to my family's social circle. Patricia's real estate clients, Benjamin's patients, even families from Rachel's fitness studios had experienced unexplained credit inquiries and financial irregularities over the past 7 years. I found at least 12 potential cases, Maria reported. Your family has been systematically identifying and exploiting people in their professional and social networks. They target individuals during vulnerable life transitions, divorce, job changes, medical issues, major family events. My parents hadn't just stolen from family members, they had built a criminal enterprise that used their professional reputations to gain access to victims' personal information, then exploited that trust for financial gain. Thomas's final revelation changed my understanding completely. Zoe, they didn't skip your wedding because they were celebrating their latest theft. They skipped it because they knew you were about to discover the fraud, and they needed to establish distance and credibility for when you inevitably accused them. The Hawaii vacation wasn't a celebration. It was an alibi designed to make them appear like loving family members, enjoying quality time together, when their daughter started making wild accusations about financial crimes. Everything had been calculated, including my emotional devastation. With Thomas's testimony and Maria's expanding investigation, our fraud case transformed from a family dispute into a federal criminal matter. Agent Kevin Walsh from the FBI Financial Crimes Unit contacted David's office on a rainy Thursday morning, exactly 2 weeks after my arrest. We've been monitoring financial fraud patterns in this region, Agent Walsh explained during our meeting at the federal building downtown. Your case fits a profile we've been tracking, and combined with the Oregon incident involving your cousin, it suggests organized criminal activity. Agent Walsh, a lean man with graying temples and 20 years of white-collar crime experience, reviewed our evidence with the methodical precision of someone who had seen every type of financial deception. His questions were specific and technical, focusing on the banking procedures and documentation that would matter in federal court. The interstate nature of these crimes brings this under federal jurisdiction, he said. If your parents have been operating across state lines using multiple identities and targeting victims through their professional practices, we're looking at significant federal charges. Forensic accounting revealed the true scope of their criminal enterprise. Maria worked with FBI financial analysts to trace money movements across 7 years and multiple states. The results were staggering. $800,000 in fraudulent loans spread across multiple banks and credit institutions. The money had funded not just Rachel's business expansion, but luxury cars, home renovations, exotic vacations, and investments in Patricia's real estate ventures. They've been living far beyond their legitimate income, Agent Walsh explained, showing us financial charts that map their spending against their reported earnings. Dr. Walsh's medical practice is successful, but not enough to support this lifestyle. Mrs. Walsh's real estate commissions are substantial but irregular, yet their spending has been consistently high for years. The forensic analysis revealed sophisticated money laundering techniques. Loans taken in other people's names were transferred to legitimate businesses, then dispersed through various accounts to obscure the paper trail. Patricia's real estate expertise had taught her how to move money through property transactions and business investments to make stolen funds appear legitimate. But Maria's digital forensics investigation uncovered the evidence that would prove devastating in court. Working with FBI computer specialists, she recovered deleted emails and text messages from devices seized during search warrants. The recovered communications showed detailed planning discussions that spanned months. Patricia had researched my financial habits, employment stability, and personal relationships to determine my value as a fraud target. Benjamin contributed medical knowledge about stress responses and psychological vulnerability, helping them time their attack for maximum effectiveness. The most damaging evidence came from deleted emails between Patricia and Rachel discussing their long-term strategy for exploiting my identity. Patricia had written, "Zoe's always been the weak link emotionally, but she's built excellent credit and has steady employment. She's too trusting to monitor her finances carefully and too isolated socially to get good advice when something goes wrong. The wedding planning has her completely distracted and financially stressed, which creates the perfect opportunity." Rachel's response revealed even colder calculation. "Once we establish the pattern with this first loan, we can continue using her credit for expansion. She'll be too embarrassed and overwhelmed to fight back effectively, especially if we control the narrative about her stability." Benjamin's contribution to the email thread focused on psychological manipulation. If she does discover the loans, we frame it as family investment and question her mental state. The community knows us as successful professionals, while she's just a school counselor. Our credibility will outweigh her accusations. Agent Walsh read these messages aloud during our evidence review, and I felt physically sick hearing my family discuss my psychological vulnerabilities, like they were conducting a clinical study. But the emails revealed something even more sinister. The family's backup plan involved framing me as an embezzler who had stolen money from my school district. They had planted false evidence suggesting I had skimmed funds from college scholarship programs I administered. Forged receipts showed fictional cash withdrawals that matched the loan amounts. Bank statements had been altered to suggest I was living beyond my means. They had even created fake gambling records to explain how I might have spent stolen money. "They weren't just planning to steal your identity," Agent Walsh explained. "They were preparing to destroy your career and reputation to prevent you from fighting back effectively." Patricia's detailed emails outlined their complete frame-up strategy. They would present the fake evidence to school district administrators and local police, painting me as a troubled employee who had stolen from student scholarship funds to finance a lifestyle I couldn't afford. "The school board will fire her immediately," Patricia had written. "No one hires guidance counselors with embezzlement records. She'll be too desperate financially to pursue legal action against us and too damaged professionally to maintain credibility if she tries." Benjamin's response showed medical precision in planning my destruction. "Will suggest she's been under increasing psychological pressure and made poor decisions. Her recent behavior around the wedding and family finances supports a narrative of escalating instability." Most chilling was Rachel's contribution to the destruction plan. Her arrest record from the harassment incident gives us evidence of criminal behavior and poor judgment. We can build on that foundation if she doesn't accept the financial situation quietly. The FBI's investigation expanded to include tax evasion charges. Their lifestyle analysis showed that my parents' spending exceeded their reported income by hundreds of thousands of dollars over 5 years. The fraudulent loans hadn't been declared as income, and the money laundering through Rachel's business had avoided proper tax documentation. Agent Walsh explained that federal tax evasion charges carried serious prison time, especially when combined with identity theft and fraud. "Your parents are facing potential sentences of 15 to 20 years in federal prison if convicted on all counts." The case was growing beyond a family dispute into a major federal prosecution that could destroy their lives just as thoroughly as they had planned to destroy mine. The FBI raids happened simultaneously at 6:30 on a cold Monday morning in November. Federal agents with search warrants descended on Benjamin's medical practice, Patricia's real estate office, and all 3 of Rachel's fitness studios, while local news crews captured every moment. I watched the coverage from David's office feeling a mixture of vindication and sadness as my family's carefully constructed image crumbled on live television. The local news anchor described it as a major federal fraud investigation involving a prominent local family, while helicopter footage showed agents carrying boxes of documents and computers from each location. Benjamin's medical practice looked particularly devastating. Patients arriving for early appointments found federal agents securing the building, while their trusted cardiologist was led away in handcuffs. The footage showed him trying to shield his face with his hands while Agent Walsh read him his rights. Patricia's real estate office presented a different scene. She maintained her composure while being arrested, speaking calmly with agents and nodding cooperatively. But her professional facade couldn't hide the reality that her real estate license would be suspended, immediately ending the career she had built over 20 years. Rachel's arrest outside her flagship fitness studio was the most emotionally charged. She broke down completely when agents placed handcuffs on her wrists, sobbing loudly while her employees and clients watched in shock. The business she had worked so hard to build was now revealed as being funded through stolen money. The community reaction was swift and brutal. Benjamin's medical practice closed immediately as patients canceled appointments and sought new cardiologists. Patricia's real estate clients withdrew listings and terminated contracts. Rachel's fitness studios saw mass membership cancellations as the local news coverage detailed how stolen money had funded the facilities people had been paying to use. Social media exploded with local residents expressing shock and betrayal. These weren't anonymous criminals, they were respected community members who had stolen from their own daughter and potentially dozens of other victims. But the real drama unfolded in the federal building's interrogation rooms, where the family's unity collapsed spectacularly under pressure. Agent Walsh later described the interviews to us, explaining how quickly my parents and sister turned on each other when faced with potential decades in federal prison. Benjamin was questioned first, and within 2 hours he was providing detailed information about Patricia's role in planning and executing their fraud schemes. Faced with losing his medical license permanently and spending his remaining years in prison, he portrayed himself as another victim of Patricia's financial expertise. Patricia handled all the banking relationships and loan applications. Benjamin told investigators, "She understood the systems from her years working at First National Bank. I trusted her judgment about family financial matters and signed documents she prepared without questioning the details." He claimed Patricia had manipulated him using her banking knowledge, describing himself as a busy medical professional who relied on his wife's financial management skills. According to Benjamin's statement, he had believed the loans were legitimate business investments that would benefit the entire family. Patricia learned about Benjamin's cooperation within hours and immediately requested her own meeting with federal investigators. Her response was devastatingly thorough. "Benjamin is lying to protect himself," she told Agent Walsh. "He was actively involved in planning every aspect of our operations. He used his access to patient information to identify potential victims, and he helped develop psychological profiles for targeting vulnerable individuals." Patricia provided evidence that Rachel wasn't just a beneficiary of their fraud, but an active participant in identifying and recruiting victims. She revealed that Rachel had suggested specific targets from her fitness studio membership, including divorced clients going through emotional trauma and elderly members who might be vulnerable to financial manipulation. Rachel recruited my husband Marcus to help transport documents and provided personal information about her clients that we used to evaluate their potential as fraud targets, Patricia told investigators. She wasn't just receiving stolen money, she was helping us steal it. Rachel's world collapsed when she learned about her parents' accusations. Faced with evidence that she had actively participated in a criminal conspiracy and devastated by her parents' willingness to blame her, she made the most damaging revelations of all. During a tearful confession that lasted 6 hours, Rachel admitted that the family had been planning to expand their fraud operation to include Jake's veteran benefits and my connections within the school district. They researched which of Zoe's students came from wealthy families. Rachel sobbed to investigators. Mom wanted to use Zoe's access to college application information and family financial documents to identify new targets. Dad thought they could manipulate scholarship and financial aid processes to steal money. The family had planned to exploit my position as a guidance counselor to access confidential student information, then use that data to target wealthy families during the stressful college application process. Rachel revealed their ultimate strategy for controlling me completely. They planned to bankrupt Zoe, financially force her marriage to fail through financial pressure, then offer to help her recover by making her part of future operations. They believed if she was desperate and isolated enough, she'd become their most useful asset. The interrogation recordings which Agent Walsh played for us later showed my family's true nature when stripped of their social facade. Years of pretending to love and support each other disappeared as they desperately blamed one another to reduce their own criminal liability. Patricia's voice was cold and calculating as she described Rachel's participation. My daughter actively helped us identify victims and provided inside information about vulnerable people. She knew exactly what we were doing and profited significantly from our operations. Benjamin sounded defensive and self-pitying. I trusted my wife's expertise and my daughter's business judgment. I never intended for anyone to be harmed. I thought we were making family investments that would benefit everyone eventually. Rachel's confession was the most emotionally devastating. I knew it was wrong, but I was desperate to save my business. I thought if we could just get through the financial crisis, we'd pay everyone back and nobody would be hurt permanently. Marcus, who had been arrested as an accessory, provided additional evidence in exchange for reduced charges. He described conversations where Patricia had discussed using Zoe as a useful idiot who could provide ongoing access to financial opportunities through her school connections. Patricia said Zoe was perfect because she trusted family completely and wouldn't question financial requests that seemed to help other family members, Marcus told investigators. She called Zoe's loyalty and trust exploitable weaknesses that would keep providing opportunities for years. Agent Walsh summarized the evidence for us after the interrogations concluded. Your family didn't just commit financial fraud, Zoe. They planned to systematically destroy your life, career, and marriage to create a dependent relationship where you'd be forced to help them commit additional crimes. The recordings would be devastating evidence in court. A jury would hear my own family coldly discussing my psychological vulnerabilities, my professional relationships, and my personal life as tools for criminal exploitation. The trial began on an unseasonably warm day in March, nearly 5 months after my wedding day, that had started this nightmare. The federal courthouse in downtown attracted media attention from across 3 states as reporters covered what had become known as the Walsh family fraud case. I sat in the victims section of the courtroom wearing a navy blue dress that Jake had bought me for the trial. Beside me sat Thomas, who had flown in from Oregon to testify, and Margaret Chen, an elderly woman who had discovered that Patricia had used her identity to open credit cards after she became a real estate client. The prosecution's opening statement painted a picture of calculated family betrayal that shocked even experienced court watchers. Assistant U.S. Attorney Jennifer Martinez described my parents and sister as sophisticated criminals who used family bonds and professional reputations to identify, target, and exploit victims across multiple states over 7 years. My family sat at the defendant's table in matching gray suits, looking smaller and older than they had during their arrest. The confident, successful facade they had maintained for years had been replaced by the hollow expressions of people facing the destruction of everything they had built. The government's evidence was overwhelming. Financial records showed fraudulent loans totaling $800,000. Digital forensics revealed deleted communications, planning criminal activities, and victim manipulation. Forensic accounting demonstrated money laundering through legitimate businesses to hide stolen funds. Thomas's testimony provided powerful evidence about the family's pattern of behavior. Speaking clearly and calmly, he described how my parents had exploited his emotional vulnerability during his divorce to steal his identity for Rachel's first business loan. They approached me during the worst period of my life, Thomas told the jury. Dr. Walsh positioned himself as a concerned family member offering support while Mrs. Walsh provided financial advice that seemed helpful. I was too devastated emotionally to recognize that they were studying my personal information to commit fraud. Margaret Chen's testimony was equally compelling. At 78 years old, she described how Patricia had gained access to her personal information through real estate transactions, then used that data to open credit accounts that funded additional fraud schemes. Mrs. Walsh was my real estate agent for selling my late husband's house, Margaret explained to the jury. I trusted her completely and shared personal information that she requested for the transaction. I never imagined she was stealing my identity to commit financial crimes. But the most devastating evidence came from the family's own recorded conversations during interrogation. The prosecution played audio of my parents and sister blaming each other, revealing their true attitudes toward their victims and describing their plans for expanding criminal operations. The jury listened in stunned silence as Patricia's voice described me as a useful idiot, and Benjamin discussed using my professional relationships to identify future fraud targets. Rachel's tearful confession about planning to exploit vulnerable students and their families drew visible reactions of disgust from several jurors. The defense attempted to portray each family member as less culpable than the others. Benjamin's lawyer argued that he was a busy medical professional, manipulated by his wife's banking expertise. Patricia's attorney claimed she was following her husband's leadership in family financial matters. Rachel's defense team portrayed her as a desperate small business owner who was pressured by her parents into criminal activity. But the prosecution's rebuttal was devastating. Assistant U.S. Attorney Martinez played additional recordings showing each defendant actively planning criminal activities, demonstrating knowledge of their illegal behavior, and showing no concern for their victims' well-being. These defendants want this jury to believe they were confused about right and wrong, Martinez told the jury. But their own words prove they knew exactly what they were doing. They planned these crimes, carefully executed them systematically, and showed no remorse until they were caught. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Expert witnesses testified about the sophistication of the forgery and fraud techniques. FBI agents described the investigation and evidence collection. Additional victims testified about financial and emotional damage. When my turn came to testify, I spoke directly to the jury about the personal impact of my family's betrayal. I described the wedding day they had missed to celebrate stealing my identity, the emotional devastation of discovering their fraud, and the ongoing effects of having people I trusted completely violate that trust for financial gain. They didn't just steal money, I told the jury. They stole my ability to trust family relationships, my sense of security about my financial future, and my belief that people who claim to love you won't deliberately harm you for personal gain. Cross-examination was difficult but necessary. Each defendant's lawyer tried to minimize their client's responsibility by questioning my knowledge of family finances or suggesting I had somehow consented to the loan arrangements. But the evidence was too clear, and my testimony too consistent for their attacks to succeed. The verdict came on a Friday afternoon after 2 days of jury deliberation. The forewoman stood and read guilty verdicts on all major charges for all 3 defendants: identity theft, wire fraud, conspiracy tax evasion, and money laundering convictions that would result in significant federal prison sentences. The sentencing hearing took place 6 weeks later. Federal guidelines called for substantial prison time given the amount of money stolen, the number of victims, and the sophisticated nature of the criminal operation. Judge Patricia Williams addressed my family before announcing sentences. This case represents a profound violation of family bonds and community trust. The defendants used their professional reputations and family relationships to commit sophisticated financial crimes that harmed multiple victims across several years. Benjamin received 8 years in federal prison and was ordered to pay full restitution to all victims. His medical license was permanently revoked, ending the career he had built over 30 years. Patricia received 10 years due to her leadership role in planning and executing the fraud schemes. Her banking background and real estate expertise had enabled the sophisticated techniques that made their crimes successful for so long. Rachel received 5 years plus supervised probation with all her business assets liquidated to pay victim restitution. The fitness studios that had been her life's work would be sold to compensate the people her family had stolen from. Marcus received 2 years probation and community service for his accessory role, but his legal career was effectively over due to his criminal conviction. Judge Williams concluded the sentencing with words that brought me unexpected peace. These defendants didn't just commit financial crimes. They attempted to destroy their own daughter's future reputation and ability to trust human relationships. That represents a violation of the most fundamental bonds that hold families and communities together. The aftermath of the trial brought changes I never expected. The school district, which had initially fired me based on the false evidence my family planted, rehired me with back pay and a formal apology. My new position as district coordinator for college counseling came with a significant salary increase and expanded responsibilities. The publicity around the case actually enhanced my professional reputation. Families specifically requested my help with college planning because they trusted someone who had survived and overcome such significant adversity. My experience with fraud made me particularly effective at helping families protect themselves from financial exploitation during the stressful college application process. Jake received a promotion to fire captain, partly based on the leadership and integrity he had demonstrated throughout our legal ordeal. His support during the darkest months of my life had strengthened our marriage in ways we hadn't expected. 6 months after the sentencing, we bought a house in a quiet neighborhood across town funded by the restitution payments and my settlement from the school district lawsuit. The 2-story colonial with a small garden felt like a fresh start, far from the memories of betrayal and manipulation. Thomas became a regular part of our lives, visiting monthly and staying connected through our shared experience of family fraud. We started a support group for fraud victims that met at the community center, providing resources and emotional support for people whose families had financially exploited them. 1 year after the trial, I received a letter forwarded from the federal prison where Rachel was serving her sentence. The envelope contained a handwritten letter that began with words I never expected to read. "Zoe, I know you have no reason to believe anything I say, but I need you to know how deeply sorry I am for what we did to you. Prison has given me time to think clearly about our family dynamics and my own choices, and I'm horrified by the person I became." Rachel's letter continued for 4 pages describing therapy sessions, where she was learning to understand how our family's competitive dynamics and focus on financial success had corrupted her moral judgment. She acknowledged that her apology couldn't repair the damage, but hoped that someday she might earn a chance to rebuild a relationship based on honesty and respect. I didn't respond immediately, but I didn't throw the letter away either. Healing would take time, and forgiveness was a process I wasn't ready to rush. But the fact that she was capable of genuine remorse suggested that the sister I had loved might still exist underneath the criminal she had become. The final chapter of this story unfolded on a sunny Saturday in September, almost exactly 2 years after my wedding. Jake and I were hosting a barbecue in our backyard for Thomas, Margaret, Chen, David, and Maria, and several members of our fraud victim support group. As I watched these people who had become chosen family laughing and sharing stories around our picnic table, I realized that my parents' betrayal had taught me something valuable about the difference between biological connections and authentic relationships. The people who loved and supported me weren't the ones who shared my DNA. They were the ones who showed up, consistently told me the truth, even when it was difficult, and chose to be part of my life because they valued who I was as a person. My phone rang during dessert. The caller ID showed the federal prison number where my father was incarcerated. I looked at the screen for a moment, then declined the call and returned to our celebration. Some conversations aren't worth having. Some relationships aren't worth preserving. And sometimes the greatest gift people can give you is showing you exactly who they are, so you can build a better life without them. The life lesson had taken me 2 years to fully understand family isn't about blood or obligation. It's about choice, respect, and genuine care for each other's well-being. My biological family had chosen money over love, but I had found real family among people who valued integrity, honesty, and mutual support. That realization was worth more than any stolen money or forgiven debt. It was the foundation for building a life based on authentic relationships rather than inherited obligations. Have you ever had to cut ties with family members who betrayed your trust? How do you rebuild after people you love prove they care more about what they can get from you than who you are as a person? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope sharing what I learned about family loyalty, financial protection, and the difference between people who claim to love you and people who actually do love you helps someone else going through similar struggles. Please like this video if my story resonated with you, subscribe for more real-life stories about overcoming family betrayal, and share this with anyone who needs to hear that surviving toxic family relationships is possible. Your support means everything to me, and I wish you all the strength and authentic love you deserve.